Hi, this is PlumBob's girlfriend, but you can call me Rachel. I'm here to share with you another speed build. This one is quite a bit different from the first speed build I uploaded because I feel like I had a much better direction with it from the start. The house I uploaded earlier this week was a bit more of a challenge for me. I used a house I found on Redfin for inspiration for that one, but this one is 100% from my head, and I feel like it's a much better representation of my style. I should say though that I was watching Tiny House Hunters when I played it and built it, but it isn't made to look like any place specific. I really like the way this build turned out. It was way more my style and reflects my style of gameplay a lot better than the family home. I tend to play with single young adult sims and have them work their way toward a family, and I usually build their homes around their lifestyle or with specific items in mind for their personalities. This just feels a lot more like it has room for growth than a traditional family home when I don't have a family of sims to start with. As you can see, I have the foundation pretty much set, and I'm just working on kind of getting the roofs and everything to work with the way that I wanted this whole build to look in my head. It's a lot of my thought process here, I guess you could say. At first you saw that I wanted the landing to be in the front of the house, but I always put it in the front of the house when I do a tiny house. This time I wanted to make it a little bit different and put it on the side of the house because I felt like that was a little bit more interesting, and it kind of, you'll see a little bit later why I say that it's going to make sense, but you'll just have to wait for that. As you can see, I'm placing the kitchen now. I have to say, this kitchen is not much smaller than my personal kitchen, and I live in a decent sized apartment, so I feel like I could actually use that kitchen and live in that tiny house sometimes when I'm looking at it. I don't keep those cabinets overhead though. I felt like they were a little bit too random next to the other parts of the kitchen. I felt like it looked really old-fashioned and traditional until you get to those cabinets, which are a little too shiny for my liking for this build. And then there's the bathroom. I don't know if you could tell, but I put the bookcase in, the bookcase door in for the bathroom, because I feel like when you have a tiny home, you really want to utilize as much space as possible. And if you can have a bookcase for a door and make it look like a secret hideaway for any kind of house, I think you should do it. I think that's awesome. And now I'm just building the upstairs out quickly. I'm going through my thought process about how I wanted everything to look. I really like the island living items that came with that pack, so you'll see the bedroom is pretty much totally island living. I just like the natural looking wood, and the colors are really vibrant and pretty, and I just really appreciate how much thought they put into that pack and how nice it is. Now I am trying to fit a small dining area in this place. I did play test it, so everything works, but I didn't actually turn on move objects until I wanted to do the dining room because the chair is just a little bit too close to the refrigerator for it to clip in. But otherwise, anything that I thought might end up being a little bit odd or funky, like the desk or anything like that, I did have a sim play test it, and everything seems to work just fine. I always get worried a little bit about the kitchens with the overhead cabinetry. Sometimes I just feel like it's a little bit too close because I can't picture it. Here is where we're kind of getting the idea that I had to really get this started going. If you see the hitch on the debugged trailer that I just brought out, I'm using that as my inspiration. It was quick, but you'll see why in a minute. I think it's pretty cute the way that it turned out, but let me know what you think down in the comments. Another nice thing that I like about this, at first it was kind of like a loft area upstairs. You'll see later that with the walls and the ceilings it doesn't totally work because for some reason you just can't have walls on the outside. You see that? I don't know why why the walls do that, to make the paint color kind of drip to the outside, and it's just kind of frustrating. But I had to put some walls up on the upstairs and kind of finish out the flooring in order for it to work for me. If any of you have any ideas as to how to avoid that so that my indoor walls don't kind of move to the outside of the build, I would love to know your advice. Now I'm just thinking of, if I were a sim, what would I want in my bedroom? And I would definitely want somewhere to hang my clothes. I know that with a tiny house you gotta be careful with the amount of space that you have, but I definitely wanted something to hang, or to be able to hang something in that place. Now I'm just decorating. I have to say, tiny homes are one of my favorites to build because they're so quick to decorate and they just look complete almost right away. I'm pretty much, I think, almost done with the indoors, and then I have to go into the outside, and that's where things get a little bit tricky for me, especially with this build. Now that's where I'm building the hitch, and thank you so much, EA, for giving us those platformed foundations. They make building so much more interesting and give you so many more options. And decorating with flowers. I love flowers, so put them as many places as I can. And then with the tire, I felt like that was just a little too small, so you'll see that I changed that later. But this was a lot more not landscaping, but decorating on the outside than I had done on my previous builds, or at least it feels a little bit more cohesive than that one did. So I'm really happy with the way that it turned out, especially up against the build. I'm not a huge fan of the way that I decorated the rest of the lot. The landscaping and everything you'll see is just kind of a little bland, but it's way better than the last one I did, so I'm pretty happy with that. And as you can see, that's where I discovered that the second that I painted the outdoors, it came inside. So now I'm dealing with the roof and everything. And oh, bye floor. Just have a floating upstairs, I guess. But you'll see, this is kind of where I realized that I have to have that flooring in the middle of the two loft areas, which was kind of a huge bummer, but I think it works out. You'll see that I separated out a little bit, and I think it turns out pretty cute in the end. I love that tire, but I just don't know what to do with it at this point. I feel like it's perfect for a build like this where you have a house on wheels essentially, or a house that can move, but I end up deleting it, so it doesn't even matter. And then finally, I'm just separating out the bedroom from the living room with that, with those lights. I really like the way that those look. An actual functional bookcase, I think, is necessary when you have a bookcase door. You want to make it look like they can read, but you also want them to be able to read, right? Does anybody else recycle the same paintings over and over and over again? I feel like I have like 3 or 4 or 5 that I just use every single time I build, and I don't know if it's a bad thing. I kind of like the way that they end up turning out all the time, but I guess that just reflects how I would decorate if I had all these things for myself in my home. Here you see I am sizing up a child's toy. So I built this the day that the latest update was released, but I hadn't figured out how to get the debug menu items to open for me, because they have that new cheat that you have to use. So I had to use a toy car like I always have to do, but I think it still turns out pretty nice, and who knows, maybe I'll go in and change it one of these days. Oh, and I remembered a trash can. I'm one of those builders who always forgets trash cans until right at the last moment, so I'm really glad that I was able to get that in there before uploading this to the gallery. And here I'm having all these grand ideas about landscaping. I'm thinking about putting some planters back there, which I think is a good idea for this sim family, but I didn't feel like, I don't know, I just didn't feel like keeping it, so you'll see I delete those planters eventually. I had a lot of grand ideas, but I didn't want to take a bunch of time because my last upload was so long. 28 minutes was just a little bit too much, and I don't think I'm going to have as many people wanting to click on my videos if they're going to be that long. So that's why I don't spend as much time outside that you'll see. I also like to leave that up to the player and kind of let people decide those things on their own. Oh, and I just deleted the cabinets, like I said, but you won't see me place new cabinets in there because I forgot until I was doing the screenshots. So you will see those in the screenshots, the updated, or the new cabinets that I chose. And then much more rustic looking tire that I found. I do like the way that that front part turned out in the end. I thought it was cute all along the way, but I really do like the way that it turned out. And then just placing some trees. I feel like trees are hard to size up and down just because the leaves get so much bigger sometimes, and it just looks a lot more unnatural than it should. But I made it work, I think. I do love this lantern tree. I think it's so pretty. I wanted to give my Sims the option to do some things outside, so you'll see here I'm about to go in and place a pool in the backyard, or the side yard, I guess. Oh, and I totally forgot that I put a guitar there. So yeah, I'm placing a pool here, and I know that it's one of those tiny homes where you can technically just pick it up and move somewhere else, but I really like having pools, and I was going to initially in my thought process make it a little bit of a pond, but then I was like, nah, I just would rather have it look like a pool next to a tiny house. Like maybe they just got lucky and they found an abandoned pool somewhere and decided to just settle in there. Wouldn't that be ideal? I mean, that's the great thing about tiny homes, is that you can just kind of pick up and do whatever you want. Alright, and I am finishing up here. I don't really do much more from here. I do find an umbrella to put down because now with island living, people can get suntans and sunburns, so I wanted to give them a little bit of protection, but just gonna do some final touches with the windows and drapes and stuff like that, which I think turns out really nice. But this is pretty much the end of the build. I'm about to get into the screenshots, so I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this build. And if you want to, it's up in the gallery if you want to download it and use it for your Sims. Otherwise, I will talk to you soon. Thank you.